Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on what I can only describe as a truly mythic journey. We're going to explore this fascinating narrative drawn from the esoteric history of Rudolf Steiner. It's this dramatic story of human survival, but more importantly, we're going to witness the dramatic birth of human self-awareness itself. You can really think of this as the ultimate origin story, not just of our physical bodies, but of our very minds.
So, let's just dive right into this by asking a massive question. Where did our sense of I actually come from? Like, how did humanity first develop independent thought? To understand this, according to Steiner's sources, we literally have to step way, way back into the radiant, water-dense mists of what's known as the Atlantean epoch. Now, this wasn't the hard, sharp physical world we know today. It was a time when human forms were softer, the air was just thick with mist, and humanity possessed this natural, almost dreamlike clairvoyance. But a massive shift was on the horizon. And to navigate that shift, we have to look to a place called the Sun Oracle. This was the absolute highest of the 7 great Atlantean mystery sites. Just imagine being inside there. The atmosphere is completely filled with this refined, glowing solar radiance, and right at the center of it all is the great Sun Initiate, a guiding figure known as the Manu. Now, the Manu was looking out over this hugely diverse Atlantean population because he had an absolutely crucial task. Atlantis was plunging into decadence, and he needed to find the perfect seed for the future of humanity. He essentially had to find a core group to carry human evolution forward into a completely new era.
Now, you might be wondering, who did he pick? Well, the Manu selection was entirely unexpected. You'd think he'd pick the most magically gifted people, right? No way. He completely bypassed the powerful seers and magicians. At that time, see, a lot of Atlanteans were actually misusing life force energies, specifically this plant seed power sometimes called vril, for their own selfish gains. Instead, the Manu impartially selected the quote-unquote simplest individuals, a group known as the primal Semites. Why them? Because they possessed a very specific physical and spiritual trait. They had a receding physical forehead, sure, but a newly developing etheric forebrain. This exact physiological shift marked the absolute dawn of independent thinking, of judgment, and even the ability to do basic arithmetic. They were basically a blank slate, totally ready for a new type of mind.
And inside their heads, this massive physiological shift was happening. See, the older Atlantean mind was characterized by an etheric head that actually protruded way out beyond the physical brain. That's what allowed for that dreamlike natural clairvoyance and interaction with the spiritual world. But as they evolved into the post-Atlantean epoch, the etheric and physical heads began to perfectly align. They just locked together. And this alignment is exactly what awakened the logical intellect. But it came with a huge trade-off. As their physical world became sharp and defined, that ancient misty clairvoyance completely evaporated, like morning mist. The spiritual world literally receded right out of their direct vision.
So this crucial shift really boils down to one profound, relatable milestone, the moment a human being says, I am an I. Visualize this group of simple people. For the very first time in human history, an individual internally refers to themselves as I. They feel separate from the group soul. They feel their own distinct ego. It is a staggering moment when you really think about it. This is the true birth of independent, self-centered thought. But like we just mentioned, with this incredible new power of the intellect, the veil dropped. The spiritual world just faded from everyday sight. With this newly awakened group, a completely perilous journey began. Back in the late Atlantean epoch, the Manu gathered this spiritually advanced fraction near present-day Ireland. And as the continent of Atlantis literally started sinking beneath the waves, this seed group began a massive trek eastward. They journeyed straight through Europe during a time of catastrophic cloudbursts and these incredibly thick fogs. It was a terrifying atmosphere that's actually remembered in myth as Niflheim, or the Fog Home. Finally, at the dawn of the post-Atlantean epoch, they arrived and settled safely in the high deserts of Central Asia, specifically the Gobi Desert and Tarim Basin regions. Out there, they were perfectly protected from the moral decline and the corrupted magic of that dying Atlantean world. So safe in Asia, the Manu gets to work preparing for the civilizations to come. He starts endowing the future teachers of mankind. From his massive host of followers, he selects the 7 absolute best, most advanced individuals. Then, in this incredible feat of esoteric science, he took the perfectly preserved etheric and astral bodies that belonged to the greatest ancient Atlantean initiates, and he literally implants those spiritual counterparts directly into his 7 chosen disciples. He basically wove ancient wisdom right into their spiritual DNA. Through this profound implantation, these 7 guys were transformed into the holy rishis, simple men radiating divine wisdom. Now, what's really vital to grasp here is that in their ordinary, everyday lives, they were just simple men with pretty basic human understanding. But when it was time for them to teach, they essentially had to completely silence their own minds. Higher spiritual beings, these great entities of the universe, would speak through them. They were radiating wisdom directly into the souls of their disciples. So this wasn't intellectual teaching, like reading from a textbook. It was a magical spiritual transmission.
And this great migration and preparation laid the entire groundwork for our recorded history, specifically the cultural ages of our current 5th post-Atlantean epoch. This whole cycle began with the ancient Indian Age, which was the direct result of these holy rishis descending from the north into South Asia to establish the very first era of our current cycle of humanity.
So what was the mood of this incredibly unique ancient Indian cultural age actually like? Well, as the rishis established this culture, each one revealed the wisdom of a specific Atlantean oracle, like the Mars, Venus, or Saturn oracles. Yet together, they all pointed towards something much greater, the concealed one, the great sun spirit, which esoteric tradition connects to the Christ. Now, remember that trade-off we talked about earlier. Because these people had newly locked-in physical brains, they saw the sharp, physical world extremely clearly. But because their ancestors used to literally see the spiritual world directly, they felt this profound disconnect. They looked at this hard, physical reality and viewed it as Maya, or pure illusion. That entire era was characterized by a really deep, aching melancholy and a longing for the lost, dreamlike spiritual home that they had to leave behind.
But, this story is a massive cycle, and it has a profound destination. According to the esoteric prophecies in the source material, quote, "Thus, in the 7th epoch, the possibility will be given for all the marvelous wisdom proclaimed by the great teachers of ancient India to be living once again in human souls, and it will now be their very own." This really brings our narrative arc to a breathtaking climax. That ancient, magical wisdom that the rishis had to channel from outside themselves, it's destined to return in the distant future, during the 7th cultural epoch. Except this time, because of that I consciousness that the Manu worked so incredibly hard to cultivate, humanity will possess this wisdom internally. It's going to be our very own independent truth.
Which brings us to the seed falling from the decaying fruit. It's a beautifully poetic metaphor, right? The decaying fruit is the dying world of Atlantis, and maybe even the passing of old unconscious ways of living today. But the seed? That is the human I. The independent ego carefully selected, protected, and planted so it could grow into a completely new, more perfect cycle of evolution. And that leaves us with the pretty powerful question as we wrap up this explainer. Knowing the incredible, mythic journey it took to cultivate your independent consciousness, what seeds of awareness are you choosing to nurture in your own mind today?